I gotta be careful. Right, so good evening, everybody. My name's Cece Vantine, and this is the Tuesday, May 18th meeting of the Norfolk Select Board. And the reason I look so unsure is Kevin Calcutt very kindly gave me a script.
You guys share screen.
Okay, so they just started the meeting, so I'm just.
Got it.
Thank you. Dated March 17th, and all day long I've been thinking, make sure you don't read it exactly as it's written. So I'm going to read the COVID intro, and as a preliminary matter, I am the chair of the Norfolk Select Board, and I'm going to confirm that both Anita Mecklenburg and Kevin Calcutt are present, as well as the town administrator, Blythe Robinson. And in terms of staff who are remote, is Judith Lizardi present?
Yes, here.
And is there anybody else on staff that is remote that needs to be recognized at this time?
Later in the meeting.
Later in the meeting. Okay, great. So I have also the speech that explains why things are a little different now due to Corona. So good evening. This open meeting of the Norfolk Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive orders of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. And going back up to the top here as a reminder, this meeting is both audio and video recorded consistent with the open meeting laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It will be rebroadcast to NCTV's government cable channel and also uploaded to the YouTube channel for NCTV. With that, please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So that was pretty much all the work that I need to do, right? Now it's done. The next thing is turning it over to Blythe for sort of a rundown of what we can expect this evening.
Thank you. So after COVID-19 updates and public comment, the action items include a presentation from Norfolk County Sheriff McDermott, an appointment to the Fire Station Building Committee, to consider a vote to approve and execute an order of taking of a fee interest in Meetinghouse Road, approval of several SERSG contracts for various supplies the town uses, to then consider the use of Town Hill for two events, one for a Girl Scout ceremony in mid-June and for Discovery Day in mid-September. Discussion items include discussing the layout of a sidewalk for Lawrence Street from Waite's Commons to the Lawrence Street Bridge, discuss the status of the Memorial Day Parade, the formation of an Economic Development Committee, to discuss posting of board correspondence, town administrator updates. Then there are 4 warrants to sign and I believe 2 sets of minutes.
Great. Do you have any COVID-19 updates?
Yes, things as the whole pandemic has been an interesting ride. Things are good and are changing. Our numbers continue to go down. We had, I think, 4 new cases last week, 11 in the last 2 weeks. And our positivity rate's down to 6.3, so we're continuing to be in the green zone and dropping. And I'm hopeful that we're headed for the gray zone. That would be wonderful. And the numbers of vaccinated residents continue to go up. As you know, the governor decided earlier this week that he's further relaxing the mandates as of May 29th and ending the emergency order on June 15th. There's a lot of discussion going on about what that's going to mean for public meetings like this, and so on. As you know, we changed rural restaurants, open meetings, that sort of thing. So the legislature's set to be taking that up, and we're all going to be figuring it out in the next 4 weeks. So, but I guess business is a little bit more back to normal on June 15th, which is wonderful. But we just need to figure out how we're going to change to adapt to it. So those are my updates.
And that, I guess, brings us to number 2, which is currently, I think, is the public comment. And when I say currently, Kevin has kindly stepped in to mind the Zoom because we had some technical difficulties on my part. And so are there people for whom they have a desire for public comment? I see one hand, but I know that there's like a little button that you're supposed to push. But if you don't have the button, there's a hand. I think it's Betsy's hand, but I'm blind as a bat, and that's really far away. So it's like half of a head and a hand. That's what I see. So, Kevin, do you have like actual physical raised hands showing? I mean, not physical, but like the little. Oh, and there's a Christmas tree. Wow.
We don't have any physical hands, but I do see Betsy
Yeah.
there.
So other than Betsy, is there any other? I just want to make sure that we're not. That is Betsy the only hand?
She is.
Awesome.
Just got
Then
mentioned
can
on
you
the select
unmute
board's meeting.
her? And there's the Christmas tree again.
Oh, yeah.
She's. Oh, bless you. They're now moving because of my antique,
No, I love it.
like my age, my advanced age, and my poor vision.
Thank you,
There
Andrew.
she is. Now I see. I still see a Christmas tree though, which I thought was somebody's.
Screensaver.
Well, it's a screensaver, but I thought
Oh,
it was
there-
like someone was gonna like talk through it, like one of those Zoom things. Like I don't know. I've had a day and it's only Tuesday. So can you unmute Betsy? And Betsy, can you let us know what your public comment is?
Okay, can you hear me?
You're a little faint.
I am. I
Can-
did click unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We think it may actually be a problem on our end, so if you don't mind holding on 1 second so that people can actually hear what you're saying. You sound very, very, very far away, so.
It's both, he's got the volume up as much as he dares with, that's
Oh, with
feedback, and
feedback.
so if the person can speak a little louder if it's possible, hopefully combined we'll be fine.
So Betsy, you're gonna need to use your projecting voice so that we can hear you, and you have 3 minutes, so let's hear what you have to say.
Okay, I'm just giving an update from the PIP group from Southwood, the hospital. Can you hear me? I'm concerned.
Yes, we can now.
Okay, the PIP group for the disposal site at 111 Dedham Street is still awaiting the first meeting on the draft public involvement plan with a presentation that we anticipate by EnviroTrack, the LSP or licensed site professionals for this site. This meeting would be open to the public once it's scheduled, and according to the mass contingency plan, it's supposed to take place on or before May 27th. And community members would be encouraged to attend, as well as members of town boards. A copy of the plan, once this meeting is scheduled, would be available on the day of the presentation. And after the presentation, a 20-day public comment period would be open. After the comment period closes, the LSP for 111 Dedham Street has 30 days to issue the finalized public involvement plan and incorporate or address each public comment. And I will end by saying, if we work backwards, usually I've been told a PIP process would, the hearing would take place on May 13th if the LSP is following the guidelines. But I repeat, we have not been contacted yet. So after I leave this meeting, I will be going to the public involvement meeting, and we'll discuss what is the best thing for us to do next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Betsy. I see, Blythe, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to weigh in on the scheduling of the meeting to let everybody know that Envirotech contacted our office yesterday, and I spoke with them today. They are working on setting up that meeting. We discussed locations, and I think they're going to be getting a hold of King Philip to possibly have it at the middle school in the auditorium to be able to accommodate the size of a group that would probably want to come. They did not give me a date that they had in mind. I don't know that. But we also offered to put the meeting notice information on our website under what's new, so people we'll get that out as soon as we know what it is. And we also gave them some information about which newspaper to advertise it in. So it's in process is what I would say.
Thank you
Well,
very
then,
much.
that's good news. That's
Thank
good
you.
to know. We
Peter
didn't
up.
know that.
You have another hand?
Oh, I have another hand. Who's my next hand?
Donna Jones.
Donna Jones. All right, Donna.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Donna Jones, North Street. At least pre-pandemic, there was a special chair in room 124 dedicated to any missing soldier. Could that chair possibly be part of a Memorial Day service? That's all for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Any other hands?
I'm seeing none at this time.
All right, well then I guess we're moving on to action items. Number 3, looks like a presentation from the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office. Is anybody in the,
I see a hand.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
I can. Can everybody else hear us? Oh, a little bit tinny though, is it? I don't know that we're gonna get any better than that.
Yes.
We can hear you.
All right, happy, ready to go. No, see, it's great to be here. It's obviously I'm a familiar face with our chair. Are you still with Burns and Levinson?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Over the course of time, so for the last 18 years, obviously I've been over at the probate court, so I know Attorney Van Tine very well when it comes to her day-to-day practice.
Now just say nice things about me and this meeting is gonna go much more smooth.
We're going to be fine. No question. One of the greatest attorneys in Norfolk County, so we're good to go. But yeah, I can understand the technical issues. I spent the afternoon at the Rotary Club in Quincy. I'm kind of their technical advisor, and so we do Zoom as well as in person. So I have to coordinate that so I can relate to it. And it's good to see Bob kind of doing the spirit of Christmas. You know, we all need a little Christmas. I was expecting to hear something from the play MAME playing, but all is good. So I just appreciate the opportunity, though, to come before the Norfolk Select Board to give me a chance to speak to you a little bit about who I am and how the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office can work hand in hand with communities like yours to meet your specific needs. So to give you a little background about me, I'm a resident of the city of Quincy. I served on the Quincy City Council for 3 terms, so that's 6 years. So I can certainly relate to my colleagues here on the board on municipal government. I attended law school, became an attorney, and I served as president of the Norfolk County Bar Association. I'm a former prosecutor in the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, and for the last 18 years prior to becoming sheriff, I served as your Register of Probate, which serves as the clerk magistrate of the Probate and Family Court in Canton. So I've been very much involved with the communities throughout Norfolk County over the course of my career. And I welcome this new opportunity to serve as sheriff, to bring a new perspective on public safety to the sheriff's office and to the town of Norfolk and the county of Norfolk. My mission as your sheriff is to make sure that the sheriff's office serves as a public safety resource for the town of Norfolk and all of our 28 communities that make out the Norfolk County communities. As we know from this past year, I spoke a lot about reconsidering what we mean by the terms public safety. So many examples have come to fruition. As sheriff, I want to push past that limited understanding of people have on the sheriff's office about just simply putting criminals in jail and expanding this to also include taking a more proactive approach to improving the conditions that make people go on a wayward path, to make those bad decisions, which in turn also makes conditions for residents to feel safer in their community. One of the ways in which we are doing this in the Sheriff's Office is to expand our direct programming and our community outreach. Our focus is going to be on at-risk populations and those that are victims of crimes, or those also that actually can fall victim to criminal behavior. So specifically, we're doing a lot of programs, and we're starting to do some research and some outreach for programs regarding juveniles in our communities. We're looking to get back into our schools, hopefully, and talk, working with the local departments to try to talk about, bullying and scams, drug issues, but also to watch out, make sure that juveniles are making the right decisions. So we're opening up opportunities for residents, students to use our ropes course in Braintree, and also our youth services program that we have. We are expanding our leadership camp, which is kind of a signature thing for the Norfolk Sheriff's Office that I inherited. That camp has been going on for years in the town of Braintree, which, as I speak to the town of Norfolk tonight, one of the things that I highlighted when I ran for sheriff is the ability and the commitment to make sure that our programming is just as robust and open and available to the southern part of Norfolk County. So one of the things we did this summer, and we're hopefully going to expand it, but we've opened a pilot program for our youth leadership camp in the town of Franklin. And so that's a limited camp. We're just going to see how it works, if we can expand it down there. I am very confident we will, so that hopefully we'll have a full service youth leadership camp in the summertime down for the southern part of Norfolk County. So those services will be available. I'm very proud to inherit a very robust senior programming, which includes our life-saving Are You OK program. I inherited this from my predecessors, and since becoming sheriff, we've seen the benefits of this particular program in saving 3 lives since January. That program, very simply, is a daily call, automated phone call that goes to all of the participants to check in with them. And there's an automated response. And most of the time we hear back immediately that things are okay. If in fact somebody does not respond to that automated phone system, our deputy sheriff initiates a direct contact with that individual. If we don't reach the person directly, we then initiate emergency response for that individual. And that's how we've saved 3 lives just this year. The last being a 90-year-old woman who fell the night before in her bathroom. And luckily our call went into her around 9 o'clock in the morning, and we had emergency services there shortly thereafter to make sure that she was okay. And she was transported to the hospital, and she came out of the hospital fine. We're exploring all the options to reach out to seniors throughout Norfolk County. We're rebranding some of the programs to reach out into the communities, to the councils on aging in various multiple languages, and so that we can serve more people. We also want to make sure, and there are numerous senior programs that we will get into at some point in a later meeting, but we're going to get those out. One of the things I'm most proud of too is the amount of security resources that are available through the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office, that are available to communities like Norfolk, especially our smaller communities that, I can certainly relate to, tight budgets, and certainly on the municipal level with some of our smaller towns. So we want to serve as a resource. I know that Chief Stone's on the call today. We want to make sure we serve as a resource for the local police and fire departments, including the use of our mobile command center whenever there's crisis management issues or search and rescue, thing that has to be put in place. We have our canine units. We just expanded the canine unit to include two brand new dogs that help out with drug sweeps as well as search and rescue issues. And we continue to have a vital strategic partnership with Metrolec, which is a regional police law enforcement agency that helps out with mutual responses to various crises. So our programs are not just about stopping crime, but it's about making sure that every resident in the county is feeling safe. And that includes feeling safe from crime itself, but also from other challenges, such as this recent pandemic of COVID-19, which we're thankfully coming out of. Climate change, another issue that we can deal with on a local level. Social isolation is an issue that causes fear in a lot of people. Opioid addiction, a lot of that fell off the headlines for the last year and a half, and yet we have seen a rise in opioid deaths over the last year, and we need to get back focused on that. And certainly systemic racism and many, many more. These threats don't simply stop at the town borders. So we need to work together to tackle all these issues head on. At the same time, though, each community experiences these problems in unique ways. Because of this, there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and we want to work with all of our towns to make sure that your needs are met. So we're uniquely situated to help coordinate responses to public safety challenges across the county. But this coordination will only be successful if it's guided by the experiences and the needs of each community. And as sheriff, I want to work closely with the town of Norfolk to make sure that we're meeting your town's specific needs. We have the opportunity to make lasting positive change in the county, and partnering with towns like Norfolk is the first step in making that happen. Through partnerships with the Norfolk Select Board, our local public safety and human service agencies, such as our veterans organizations, our school districts, our councils on aging, we'll work together to tailor our public safety efforts to what works best for the town of Norfolk. So that is a brief overview and reintroduction to many of you tonight. I look forward to working alongside of you as your Norfolk County Sheriff to make sure that Norfolk and Norfolk County at large remain safe for all of our residents. And I'm happy to answer any questions and field any comments that you might have. One thing that I did leave out that I just wanted to make sure I highlighted at some of the towns, I've been promoting some of our services that we do offer, and one of the things that we're finally getting back out into the towns to do is our community service projects that we have our pre-release inmates that go out and help various cleanup projects or small work projects in the various towns. And the men who are in that pre-release program look forward to working on those projects in the various towns throughout Norfolk County. So I'm not sure if the town of Norfolk has ever utilized the services of the Norfolk Sheriff's Office, but that is certainly available to the town whenever the need is big. And I guess maybe I want to answer or pre-answer. Chief Stone had submitted a question to the office regarding a program which I think is a vital partnership for the towns, and that's what's known as a Safe Keep program, especially with smaller towns with more limited resources. And I can imagine that the chief wants to make sure that the overtime budget stays low and that the facilities at the Norfolk Police Department aren't overtaxed if in fact that's the case, and they have to hold on to prisoners. The Sheriff's Office has a Safe Keep program, which basically allows for the Sheriff's Office to work with the town, with the police department, to bring custody of a detainee awaiting trial, somebody that doesn't make bail, that's waiting to go to the district court either the next day or, more importantly, when it's a weekend stay. So, God forbid the chief and his officers have an arrest that comes in on a Friday afternoon, and let's say it's a 3-day weekend, which makes it even worse. Is the chief and his officers would have to have the care and custody of that detainee until the court's open, or until, if a bail commissioner doesn't set bail, they'll have to hold on to that detainee until the Tuesday morning that the court opens up, and that puts a major tax on the resources of the Norfolk Police Department. And we have the facilities and we have the staff that are able to handle that. So I've got a memorandum of understanding that's going to be going out by the end of this week to all of the chiefs in Norfolk County about the parameters of that program, how it works, to make sure that we have a robust understanding of what detainees we would take when we take them. But I believe that our facility and our staff is much better equipped to handle those detainees as they wait to go to the respective courthouses. We have a robust transportation team that goes out every day to the courts. So I'm hoping that we have that agreement in place for all of our local police departments. Like I said, it'll be out by the end of this week, and the sooner we get that understanding, the more we can have a direct relationship. We take them now. We don't have to wait for the MOUs to be signed, but I hope that we can always have that ongoing relationship with our local public safety officials that need our services.
Thank you very much. we will miss you in your old role, we being the divorce bar. But now we also know where we can go hunt you down and harass you, so that's good. And to harassing you, one of my questions, which I'll just take a step back and just sort of explain to some of the folks who may be watching and wondering why it's important, just to sort of add a little bit of context for you, why it's important to have the kind of partnership that you're discussing, submitting the memorandum of understanding about, is because we are a small town. I even think in the larger communities, if somebody gets picked up, as you say, on a domestic violence charge, or they have warrants, or they have, something from out of state, and there's some reason that they cannot be released, and they're going to be in the small jail cell for 3-4 days, it removes somebody from the road who then has to be there to monitor for their own safety, et cetera. And so, yeah, you have to pull in people to do overtime, which really impacts the budget. And to be able to utilize a resource that it has always been our understanding we should be able to utilize, and to hear that we're going to be able to do that is great. It's music to my ears. I'm sure it's music to Chief Stone's ears. And so I'll just ask that once the MOUs are signed, or hopefully we don't need it before then, but in the event that we feel that we're not getting the help that we need, right? If in the event that there's sort of pushback, and I'm not saying that there is in this particular regime, but in the event that there was sort of always a reason or an excuse as to why we couldn't avail ourselves of something that our cumulative taxes, along with all the other communities, sort of help support, who is the person that we reach out to, for lack of a more elegant term, squawk about it?
So it's a great question, and I met with her this morning. Of course, the buck stops here. So obviously anything that goes on is certainly is my responsibility, but we had our final meeting. The reason why the MOU and the final order is going out today is we've been debating this and making sure that it's a fairly open agreement that clearly delineates when and how, most of the time, how we wouldn't take somebody. And there's very few circumstances that we wouldn't. And so the assistant superintendent is Danielle Frayne. She's fabulous. And she knows she knows the inner workings of the jail better than anybody. And so Assistant Superintendent Frayne is the direct contact. And that's something that's in the MOU too, is that we want to have an agreement. Obviously, we want to know who in the towns is the go-to contact if there's clearly a problem, whether it's the chief or a lieutenant or somebody in the command staff, or if it's an officer that's in charge. But we're going to have specifically listed the direct line of contact would be our shift commander on a day-to-day basis. And all of the shift commanders are well aware of my intention in this partnership that I believe is valuable. So our shift commanders, from a culture point of view, are knowing how important this is for me to create this partnership with the local police department. But absent, if there is ever a dispute on an individual case, it does go up through a chain of command, which includes an assistant deputy superintendent who is always on call for this facility on any given day. And that certainly will also, usually there's a discussion with the ADS as well as the assistant superintendent. And if there's a true controversy that comes out, then certainly it's going to be addressed by me and the superintendent, as well as with the chiefs and the local police department. But the MOU will clearly, I think it'll make sense to everybody as to what the parameters are. And there's very few situations. Usually it has to do with any, with what's known as a Q5 threat, if we wouldn't take somebody necessarily who is, is highly intoxicated or who has injuries that otherwise should be addressed by a medical facility. So it's things of that nature. And it comes down, and you'll appreciate, it comes down to liability at some point, and who's responsible to make sure. But some of the old agreements that were in that I read about, which I thought were horrific, is, there was discussions about, the local department, would have to, maintain the inmates if they had to go to a hospital in Boston. The local police department would be responsible on, coming back to the jail and taking the detainee to the hospital. And there's other agreements that other language that I whipped out regarding paying a fee to the sheriff's office. That was actually in a prior MOU, that there was a fee that the sheriff would bill the town for a particular detainee fee. And I thought that was just horrific. So we've eliminated all that stuff. So I think we're going to have a good program and a good relationship with all the towns. And like anything, nothing's etched in stone and nothing is perfect. And we're willing to grow with what your needs are.
Awesome. Anita, any questions? How about Kevin?
Oh, I just want to say thank you for joining us, Sheriff McDermott. We appreciate it. I've heard great things from my friends up in the northern part of the county who have attended the Youth Academy out in Braintree before. Our oldest is actually turning 10 in March, so we look forward to a successful pilot in Franklin and potentially jumping in next year.
That'd be great.
Blythe, do you have any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
How about Chief Stone? Anything? Kevin, is he on your little screen?
Yes, he just unmuted himself.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
Hey,
I had
Chief.
to unmute, of course. So the only one that's difficult when we get a Q5 on a Friday afternoon and they don't want to take that person. I mean, we consider the Norfolk County Jail the experts in the business, and we're far from that because they do it every day. We do it very, a couple hundred times a year. So that'd be the one time that I would have would wish that we could revisit, but understood that if they've gotten a medical issue while we've had them or getting them into
Lander, if you do another one, I'm throwing them out.
Okay, so anyway, we're just looking forward, maybe we can revisit that one. There's a couple others that came up, but answering yes to the suicide question is a tough one for us, because then we have to provide, constant watch on this person. So it gets expensive, as the sheriff did say. And I can tell you that we've had 2 instances that I've gotten out of everybody today, that we were successful since the sheriff took over, and we appreciate that. And one instance that we didn't, and it was a medical issue. So that's it.
And I think Chief, those should be, and we should have an ongoing discussion with those, because they are, circumstances will dictate a lot of these things. And, we say medical issue can be a wide variety of things, whether it's, drugs or, somebody who's highly intoxicated, or, generally you're right. I mean, we have a full medical staff at the jail, and that's the thing, when you say we are certainly equipped to deal with many of the issues that are faced. And I think when it comes to, we always get hung up, and it's part of the MOU to talk about whether or not there should be an additional, inquiry about a commitment of some kind, whether it's to Bridgewater or some other mental facility that might be otherwise more equipped for us. But literally every situation should be a new example of what to discuss, just to make the program that much better and have a better understanding from our end as well as the local police departments as to how best to handle those individual situations. And I'm happy to work with you on that.
I know that my brother and sister chiefs in the community and the local communities are all faced with the same issue. They'd love to be able to call and say, I got to bring a person down. And then if you were able to transfer them to the court, which you said you could, and on Monday or Tuesday morning, whichever day it is, that would be wonderful, because that's, we have to make a special commitment to get someone in extra to go down there, because we don't do it with less than 2, as you well know. So, all those things are great. And I have a long history with Danielle, because I remember her before she was Danielle Frayne. So.
Danielle Boomhauer.
Yes.
Absolutely. So
if we can work that out, that would be great. So let's continue talking.
Affirmative. Sounds good. Thank you.
So I don't see any more questions up here. The only other thing I'd add is just to sort of echo the chief. It's good. It's nice to hear that you're mindful of the fact that the list has to be fluid in terms of just using the Q5 as an example. If somebody is heavily intoxicated and so they have to be PC'd, and then they're rejected, but you know, people have a tendency to sober up when they're in jail, you know, to be able to have that point of contact to say, fine, we'll hold him for the 6 hours until the alcohol's out of his system and then we're calling you again. Those types of things. I'm just sort of looking forward to hearing from Chief Stone that there are more successes, as there have been since January. So thank you very much, and have a
pleasure.
great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is number 4. Please consider appointment to the Fire Station Building Committee. Blythe?
Yes, so as you know, the board appointed the committee a couple of months ago, and we fairly quickly had a resignation of one of the first members. After that, I reached out to the people who had applied to see if those were still interested. One of them declined, one of them was joined the ZBA, and Mr. Kent was still available and still interested. So he came to the last Fire Station Building Committee meeting earlier this month. They met with him again because, as they said to him, we were so focused on interviewing with the select board ourselves, we didn't really focus on what you were saying. So they met with him. We unanimously recommend that he be appointed to this committee, and he'd like to. So in your packet is information you've seen before, his application and his background, which I can go into in more detail if you'd like. I did not ask him to join the meeting tonight since he'd already met you before.
Right, there's only so much parading around you need to do.
We've
for
offered
volunteer.
him a few meetings that should he be appointed in the future in the coming weeks, so we'll keep him busy.
I have no questions or comments. Anita?
No? I think
Kevin?
it's
None
fabulous.
for mine.
So I guess I would need a motion. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I move that the board vote to appoint John Kent to the Fire Station Building Committee.
Second?
All those in favor, say aye.
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 I don't hear any opposed, so it is unanimous. Number 5, Blythe?
Yes, so as you know, at town meeting, the town meeting voted to allow us to accept 3 different roads in town, one of them being Meetinghouse Road. And they gave the board the authority to take it by a couple of different means. One of them was eminent domain. As you know, this road should have been deeded over to the town by the developer, I'd say at least 6 years ago, by the last one of the amendments to the comprehensive permit for that development. I can't answer why that didn't happen, but it hasn't. We have been unsuccessful in working with the developer prior to this year to get that moved over. So in your packet is an order of taking that's been drawn up by town council that describes it, as well as the motion and the adoption of the order for your review. And should the board decide to move forward with this, then we will record it and then send a letter to Mr. Borelli, listed as the owner, to let him know that the town has taken it, and we've prepared it with $0 for the fee interest. So that's my overview.
Kevin, any questions or comments?
None for mine.
Anita?
None from mine.
From my end, comment, I feel like, we've been talking about this for a while, plus it was pretty well discussed at town meeting, and I know, was the order of taking that's in our packet, that was also posted on the website, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
This whole thing was on the website. The only thing that's not there is the letter to the owner
No,
once
no,
it's
no, I just-
recorded. Yeah.
I just noted that the motion sought to approve the order of taking, so I just wanted to avoid having to read it into the record.
Yeah.
So-
Obviously, we need to fill in the plan, book, and page once it's recorded. And
Right.
we're still waiting for the engineer to give us the actual square foot area, which is on the Schedule A. But according to town council, we can fill those in after your vote.
Well, and we have to vote before you can record it, and we wouldn't know the book and page until it's recorded, so
Yeah.
we'd be ending up in a.
Yep.
So, With no questions or comments from anybody, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the board approve and execute the order of taking for a fee interest in the following ways and properties as more fully described in the order in order to effectuate Meetinghouse Road's acceptance as a public way, accordance with the annual town meeting vote of May 8th, 2021.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Number 6, Blythe?
Yes, as you know, we are part of the group of communities called SERG, SERSG. It's 23 communities to get together for regional procurements. Been doing so for a quarter century or more. And there are 4 items that were up for renewal this year. They include office supplies, paper, DPW supplies, and water and sewer chemicals. So all the amounts in these various contracts are estimates based on prior needs of the town of Norfolk. We don't have to buy those amounts, but we have to give the vendors an estimate of what we would expect to buy, so they put their bid together. The board of directors met on all of these. They recommend them, and so do our departments.
Blythe, can you just, I know now because I snuck forward and took a look, that SERG stands for Southeastern Regional Services Group.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just tell me a little bit about, I understand also that it's a group of communities. Can you just tell me a little more about it?
So they formed about 25 years ago for the purpose of getting together and collectively buying things that were not available. I think back then there really wasn't a state contract for things, or things, and so rather than each community go out and put out its own bid, hold its own process, they got together and said, hey, we can do this more efficiently if we bid out all the things in common that we all need, and we likely can get a better price in doing so than buying them on our own. So that's what drives it. They have a director whose sole job is to do all these, and we pay I think our fee to be a member is about $4,000 a year. So I think it does save us time and effort not to do these one by one ourselves.
And has anybody ever, and this is the coupon clipper in me, has anyone ever, like when I compare how much my BJ's card costs versus my savings and how many days after I renew that I actually break even, has anyone sort of compared, obviously the time value of money, I would imagine, in having people who are doing the work, but do you actually also get large, savings on the bulk items?
In my 2 years here, I haven't done that investigation. I can ask Todd if he has.
Oh, no, I was just, that was
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
that wasn't, I need to know it before I vote. It was just more a,
It's a good question,
Curiosity
and
question.
it might be good to grab a contract and just kind of dig into it a bit deeper and say, pick office paper. Are we doing as best as we can, or?
right, I was just curious.
Yeah, no, a good question.
Kevin, any questions or comments?
None.
Nope.
Then I would entertain a motion.
I move that the board authorize the chair to award bids for SERG water and sewer chemicals, DPW supplies, office supplies, and paper to various bidders for fiscal year 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. A lot easier to do that when there's only 3. Number 7, Blythe?
So we've had 2 requests for use of Town Hill coming up. First, the Girl Scouts would like to have their bridging ceremony on June 19th. They typically, I guess, have it at KP, but they like to have it outdoors and in that location. And Jen Oliver is here to talk with you about that if you have any questions. And then Jen Cote, on behalf of the Norfolk Small Business Association, is putting together an event called Discovery Day, where a number of small businesses can come and set up a booth on Town Hill in September, on a Friday afternoon, evening, September 10th, so that people can come discover small businesses that may not know about in Norfolk. She's hoping to have as many as 30 to 50 vendors who will set up from about noon to 4, and then be able to have people stop by to visit them, to learn more about them. And so we've been working with her. We had a group meeting of various department heads with her in April to talk about traffic and parking and bathrooms and tents and sizes of tents and that sort of thing. And she's done a great job nailing down those details. The only detail we haven't resolved yet, because they're still thinking about it, is whether or not there would be a group who'd like to pull a one-day license for alcohol. Because as you know, restaurants who already have alcohol licenses can't have a one-day, but perhaps there's a group who, on behalf of it, would like to be able to have that in a roped-off section for people to be able to enjoy as well from a business. So that's the only detail we haven't nailed down, and there's plenty of time to do that, add that later, but this is for the core event itself. And I know Jen was joining the meeting as well to be able to talk with you about it.
Awesome. So I think that you indicated that Jennifer Oliver was available. I don't have any questions as the parent of people who have bridged in various and sundry organizations, but I don't know if that she had prepared something to speak. And
she may have some things to add that I just didn't get a chance to mention.
I wouldn't want to prevent her from saying that, and then I'll open it for questions from the board.
Hi, Jen Oliver. Thank you. I didn't have anything prepared. I just, in case anyone had any questions, but I appreciate the chance to talk if you have any questions.
Excellent. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I'm like the steamroller. I'm like, all right, it's a business meeting. Let's keep this thing going. But then, someone's prepared like an 18-page PowerPoint with the little girls and the whole thing. I didn't want to shut it down. So I need to make sure that I will steamroll over people continuously, but that on day one I didn't hurt too many. So good. I don't have any questions. Anita, how about you?
No questions. It sounds like a fun event.
It does sound awesome. How about you?
I don't mind, thanks.
All right, well, that was easy. So now the next person on the block, so to speak, would be Jen Cote, and that is regarding the Norfolk Small Business Association. Again, I don't think that she necessarily has anything she needs to present. I've read the packet of materials. The thing that my takeaway that I always like to double check is I don't see anything in here that says the taxpayer has to front anything, which I think is delightful unless I'm missing something.
So we did talk about having one detail officer just for the time that that the event would actually be happening, and so keep it at a minimum for Jen's group of 4 hours that they'd pay for. They're going to take care of their own trash. She's going to make bathrooms available.
Right.
We did offer parking up here. I mean, we're not open on a Friday afternoon, so why not let people park here so they can walk down? It's a little further, but it's safe and, nearby.
Oh, absolutely. But we're paying for the detail officer, or?
They will.
Okay. See, that was what I took out of. See, also my radar was like, what? And I assume I sort of saw some communication back and forth relative to conversations that have been had with Chief Stone, so I'm assuming that the police are all sort of dialed in, which would have been my only questions, that the public safety are aware, because it's great that there's this large potential group of involved people engaging with it. I just would want to make sure that that public safety was aware and that we weren't paying any money for it. And now I'll turn it over to Anita for where her questions lie.
My only question would be, is Discovery Day just exclusively Norfolk businesses or Norfolk and surrounding communities?
I think just Norfolk, but I'd turn it over to Jen to answer that.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Yes, our plan for now is that it would be primarily Norfolk businesses. It would sort of give Norfolk businesses the chance to be highlighted. I know that there's several towns that have like a small business association, and we have never had this sort of opportunity before. So it would be primarily for Norfolk businesses.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Just after doing beer gardens over at Town Hill for the last few months, I did have a question about what the plan would be for bathrooms as noted here. Now just thinking about it, it's probably right in Exhale, right?
Yeah, so our plan for now is that I'm going to open up Exhale, and I'll have one of my staff over there sort of watching the building and just making sure that it's safe. And if it seems like it's going to be a larger event than planned, and the plan is that the businesses would pay for a table. So if we need to, we could certainly rent a porta potty as well.
Got it. Thank you.
And the only other question I have actually isn't for her, it's for you, Blythe, and perhaps I should have known this, but when you said if you've already got a liquor license, you can't purchase a one-day liquor license, does that mean, just sort of as a for instance, that if there was a restaurant in town that had a liquor license who wanted to be involved in an event like this, they couldn't acquire a one-day liquor license
Right,
in order
you
to
either
serve?
have a license to sell on the premises.
Only on, you can't do both.
Right,
Is that like a statewide or just
Yeah.
us?
yeah,
That's
statewide.
weird.
So,
If only we knew like someone in the legislature who could bring up the fact that that seems like it's like
Got to work on our networking.
local, right? Local victualers are being left out of the Town Hill largesse. So that's it. That was the only questions that I had. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the board authorize the use of Town Hill for the following events: the Girl Scouts Bridging Ceremony on June 19th from noon to 7 p.m. and Discovery Day on September 10th with a rain date of September 17th from noon to 8 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Number
you.
8.
So I'm trying to mouse before I talk. So, the next item on the agenda is the discussion item. The permit for Waite's Commons, which was formerly Abbeville, includes the requirement that the developer put in a sidewalk, and the sidewalk is meant to go from the development down to the bridge, the new bridge that's there. And the approval of the sidewalk, actually, according to the agreement done by the ZBA, is at the approval of the DPW, and if they and the developer can't reach an agreement on the location of the sidewalk, it reverts back to the decision being made by the ZBA. So you're probably sitting there going, well, then why are we talking about this tonight if it's not our decision? The reason I asked to have this on the agenda was because at the end of the day, the memorandum of understanding, which the board will sign, this would be encompassed in it, and I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to see the plan for it that DPW has worked out with Mr. DePlacido. We also made the neighborhood group across the street aware of this because they've had some input into where the sidewalk would go. And in the location that is proposed, there would be either an easement or an eminent domain taking that we needed for, I think, 2 homes, and we've made those folks aware of the meeting tonight. So really, for tonight, it's discussion. We want to make sure that we're kind of everyone's on the same page. We should continue moving forward so that that MOU can be finalized and we can move ahead. So joining us tonight is the Assistant DPW Director, Barry LaRiviere. Tom DePlacido, I think, is here. I see him in another corner of the screen. And I know Rich McCarthy has joined us, who, as staff to the ZBA. So hopefully we have everyone together, plus any residents who may have joined, to help you, just walk through the details. And I apologize, this is a PDF and a very small picture. But there's also a color copy in
the
your packet. So with that, I'm not sure if you want to turn it over to Barry or Tom to tell you more about the details of the sidewalk.
Well, before we do, I just want to make sure that I understand sort of what's being asked of us as a board tonight. It's just to listen and learn, correct?
Correct.
So it's not like an open, every single person who loves it is going to tell us why they love it, because that isn't going to happen. So if they're just kind of foreshadowing, and every person who hates it is going to tell us why they hate it, it's just to educate the board with input from some of the folks impacted and some of the folks who are looking for it.
Correct, because if the reaction is visceral about this, then we would want to signal back that we want to look at it further, or are we on the right track here? And we should continue forward to bring you a final document.
But has it gone to the ZBA yet?
No, it hasn't, because DPW and the developer have worked out this plan.
Uh-huh.
And DPW thinks that this is a good location for reasons that I know Barry can explain.
Right.
And so Tom and Barry are here with Rich to explain to you the whys and wherefores for this.
Yeah.
And then we said we took the initiative to make others aware of it, so if they had some concern about it, they could tell you, and we could either decide to drop back and work on it some more or continue forward.
So, okay, just to put a thumbtack in that for a second, let's hypothetically say that we hear things that lead us to think, oh, we have to drop back. Are you saying that we need to perfect something before it goes to the ZBA? Because I just don't know that I see that.
No, it's just that at the end of the day, if they say this layout is exactly what we decide to do, this board and town meeting will need to take action to acquire easements, which will require you to take more steps in the future. And we just want to make sure everybody knows what's planned,
Sure,
what's coming.
Right, okay,
Yep.
so I just want to make sure that it's pretty much educational.
Yes.
And that even if we think, oh gosh, there may be some more they need to look at, they may decide to look at it and then decide that it's just fine and still proceed with the path that they actually are
Correct.
allowed to proceed with.
Yep. And part of the reason you're going to hear about why it is where it is because some landowners already said yes. The agreement calls for the developer to spend some amount of money to acquire, to do the engineering and acquire the easements. Help us with that. We want to make sure that we're not having that person go off and spend money doing those things only to find out that, no, we want to change it. So we're just trying to keep everybody, see if everyone's on the same wavelength about what we're doing here. So we don't go too far down the path and have to change again. And have the town have more expense perhaps than it needs to get this.
Okay, last question before I'll open it up to the experts. Hypothetically, we allow it to continue along the journey that it ordinarily continues, and it comes back, and we think it's crackerjack, or we don't. We're just basically giving our opinion before it goes to town meeting. Correct?
Right, because town meeting, if we're going to need easements from Mrs. Smith and
Sure, right.
then the board's going to need to, support those.
So no matter what we hear, we don't, it's the ZBA who has the say at this juncture. And then no matter what we sort of opine, it ends up at town meeting. And they could, depending on how many people get, I just want to manage everybody's expectations, although I suspect they've been around the block enough to know that depending on how many folks show up based on, where they're aligned, it could go up or down despite all of our vetting, best efforts, et cetera.
It could.
Okay, just making sure everybody is clear of that. All right, so I would love to hear from, I guess in the order that, I don't know if we need all three, but I guess Mr. McCarthy's here to answer questions, and that, so I'll hear from the pro side, not professional, just they're in favor, Mr. DePlacido, and I'm gonna massacre his name, so I'm not gonna try, Barry, and then we'll go from there.
Good evening, members of the board and public officials who are attending and the public at large.
I don't,
Can't hear you very well, Rich.
Can't hear me?
No. We've had a lot of trouble with everybody tonight, haven't we?
It's just
All right.
us here in the room too. He can hear them just fine in Zoom.
Oh, okay,
so it's
good.
just us in the
Oh,
room who can't
phew.
hear him very well. So Rich, if you could just project when you talk, that'd be appreciated.
All right, I'll project. Sorry about that.
Perfect.
Is that better?
Yes.
All right. So in terms of order, I think what I would do is I would let Barry lead off, and then I'll fill in after, if you don't mind. He could talk more. I'll fill in detail as needed. We kind of had set it up that way. We should have introed that to you at the first.
No problem, Rich. I got it. Good evening. Hope everybody's well. So we met a couple months back to kind of go over our options of the correct sidewalk layout. One of the issues we have, major issue, is the alignment of the right-of-way. I don't know if you have your PDF maps in front of you. The black line indicates the edge of the right-of-way. It's pretty evident that the roadway is not within the right of way for a good portion of Lawrence Street. So if it was in the right of way, it would give us more options to align the sidewalk without having to go over any private property. So the best alternative we came with was putting the sidewalk to the north side of the project. It would link pretty much the causeway to the new subdivision. We are looking at a couple, it's tough to see based on the scale of the map, the rough area that we're looking for the takings at 51 and 49. It's probably going to be only 3 to 4 feet. We're not talking a major issue. Rich McCarthy has reached to the owners of Buckley Man, has some verbal agreements with them that we could probably access their properties. The developer, Mr. DePlacido, is going to work with us to actually remove some of the steep hill between his property line and number 51. That'll actually allow us to realign the roadway. So not only can we put sidewalks in by the plan that we're looking at, but allows us to push Lawrence Street further in the right of way off of the properties of 34, 32, and 30. So we'll actually get the roadway in the proper alignment. The game plan that we went with would limit the amount of crosswalks that we would need, and it would make the sidewalks more contiguous across down the street, instead of pedestrians having to go back and forth across Lawrence Street. So we had a good planning session. It was at least 3 or 4 hours where we sat there and kind of brainstormed this. And this seemed the best location for the sidewalk based on all parties' interests.
So I appreciate Mr. McCarthy chiming in with an audible, but I'm curious with what Mr. DePlacido has to add, and then I do have a question. I'm sure other people do as well. But I'd like to hear from Mr. DePlacido his thoughts on what you guys have come up with, and then we can ask some questions, which I understand is why Mr. McCarthy is here. But I just want to hear from Mr. DePlacido first.
Yes, thank you. The sidewalk, as it's located on this plan here, is something that we've discussed with the DPW and the town planner, Mr. Rich McCarthy, and we're in agreement too. It's the best location to place it. It's all on one side, it's contiguous, and actually it presents an opportunity too for the town to try to straighten out the road and actually put the pavement within the right of way where it should be. So it actually tends to solve a lot of problems in that area for the town and the DPW. So we're in agreement with it.
Is there, in terms of other options, when you say that this is the best option, and you say this gives you an opportunity to do things sort of contiguously, what is the other option, and why is it not as good?
The other option would be going down on the south side of the street. Again, looking at the PDF map, the black line is the edge of the right of way. So there would be more houses affected by takings or agreements or eminent domain. By putting the sidewalk on the south side of the street, we wouldn't be able to realign the street that we would need to. It would also cause several crosswalks. So instead of having one contiguous sidewalk on one side of the road, pedestrians would have to cross the road. We had 3 possible locations. In basically designing sidewalks, you want to limit pedestrian exposure to the roadway. So by having it the other way, we eliminate a couple crosswalks, and then pedestrians will be safer walking on that side.
Do either of you have questions before I sort of invite the counterpoint to make a...
I'm sorry, go ahead, Anita.
No, I don't.
My only question would be, when you note that the roadway realignment would be for us to move the road into the right-of-way and the town would do the work, could you just explain to me what the scope of that would look like?
Yeah, so right across from lot 32, there's a steep hill. Right across lot 32. Oh, little feedback on that one. Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
So Mr. DePlacido actually could use the gravel as part of his development that's there. So he would do all the earthwork on the slope and actually do that work for the DPW. When it comes time to pave the road, we're not going to know the condition of the roadway until we get all the water in and all the other utilities. So we may either have to reclaim the roadway, which is a basically completely redoing the asphalt, a complete reconstruction, or milling it. At that point in time, if we have to reclaim the roadway, we can mill out all the existing asphalt, physically shift the roadway off, out of the property lines of 32 and 30. And then we would basically pave the roadway within the right of way and then re-lumen seed and address any disturbance to the lots 32 and 30. So it's minimal effort on both of our parts, and it would work out. We could work together easily on it.
Thanks, Barry.
Now, Richard, I'm just going to ask you to identify, because I know Blythe suggested that there were some folks who had a differing opinion or concerns relative to the choice of side of the road. Is there a particular person who you think would be sort of speak to their concerns that would want to speak? We'll start with that.
I'm not 100% sure I would say that the concern has been developed at this point. I think it's more they're learning, because we're just presenting this at this point, the layout of the options as far as the sidewalk, and they're again learning about it as we're talking dynamically in terms of where we're at. I think in general, when you have a project, there might be concerns about it, but I don't think there's anything specific. But I know I've reached out to Mrs. McCabe. We corresponded back and forth. I believe I saw at least her husband on at one point. There might be a few other.
I'm here. I'm her husband, David Mastro. I'm here.
Okay, so he might speak to it. They had some general comments in terms of, the process and what happens. I know we talked about some sprinklers, that kind of thing, but hopefully, or at least I think the expertise. Let me just, if you don't mind, I wanted to add that I did reach out to the representatives from the Mann family in terms of their participation in this potentially helps the town in terms of regrading that Barry had mentioned. So that would be done deeper into their property. But I had the opportunity back in March 30th when we had an on-site meeting relative to contamination issues. Representatives from their family was there, and we walked Lawrence Street and kind of talked about what was being contemplated. So I don't see them online, but they have at least at this point understand the scope of it and didn't have any objections thus far on this proposal.
So I know that again, I don't have. You'd have to have the giant television like right up on the desk for me to read the name, but I can see that it's someone in a festive shirt with an aloha, and so I'm going to invite
David Mastro.
Aloha to tell us. I understand it's early days yet, right? So that this is still sort of vetting, and I hope they understand that this is not the purpose of the Board of Selectmen beyond just making sure, everybody, right? It was a great idea on Blythe's part, but we're not going to spend 3 hours asking all sorts of questions. There's a time and a place for that. This isn't it. But I am curious about the folks who are impacted, questions, concerns, etc. And because I can see the word aloha, that is
me.
who I will invite to speak.
So my name is David Mastro. I live at 26 Lawrence Street. And so we understand that a big part of our front yard belongs to the town. It's their right of way. And, we are for the sidewalks. And my biggest concern is that I've taken care of the town's property very nicely. I would probably assume, I don't know how far you're going to go from the current road now inwards, but I would probably say I would have probably about 30 heads or more in that area. And so, that cost me a lot of money to put out there. So I was hoping, the town would replace them and, move them, or I get a guy to do it, the local guy, Norfolk guy, irrigation guy, and have them move it if you laid out to where you're going to take, and I can do that ahead of time to save you guys and then give you the bill if that's what you want. But our other biggest concern is that when you straighten that road, which is a great thing, it's a good thing, less dangerous turns, but people nowadays fly on that road and they cut down it. And if you straighten that road, which is a good thing, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, people are going to go faster down that hill, and you're going to have more accidents and more people not make that turn for that bridge. In the past, a few people have missed that turn in the past and have ended up in the water. I would think that maybe, I don't know, a speed hump somewhere or stop signs to slow people down, because otherwise they're going to fly through. I mean, there was some pool guys that were going through. We had to call their company up to tell them to slow down because my kids, were playing and, they're out of control. They're going 65, 70 miles down a road that's not that wide. And so that, I'm all for the improvements, but also we have to make it safe too. And
I think you're having some connectivity issues.
It's becoming the other side of Franklin. They come out. I'm about to get home, so this is where we live in Norfolk. We don't have much issue.
All right. Well,
Hey, David, I just put you on mute. You're having some reception issues, man. Put you on mute.
Again,
right now.
it's
on mute too. Still not on mute. He's got it's like an alien. Is he on mute now?
Yes.
So, so I heard the two comments that this particular neighbor had, neither of which seem necessarily like a conversation that needs to be had tonight.
Right.
But are certainly things that, Rich, I'm going to put it to you. What is the process for those kinds of concerns that someone in a neighborhood might have? Everyone should know I'm like crazy, silly, bullish on speed humps and speed bumps. You're singing my song, but that's a different story for a different day, and I'm mindful of that. Who is the person that we could put folks like this gentleman in contact with to sort of answer these more general questions that don't necessarily have to do just with this particular project, right? That's a question relative to the speed humps and the likelihood that we would get them, et cetera, et cetera. Who can we help this person out with?
So the question about, the first question I'll take, which is a little bit easier, I think, would be the sprinkler question. That's that we would need to coordinate with DPW. I think Mr. Mastro's property in this particular instance will be further away from it. So if all goes well, I think the road goes the other way, further away from, not closer to him. So the sprinkler issue might not even be an issue as we get further
Right,
along.
but that's why I'm suggesting we not actually have this conversation tonight so much as we put them in contact with the kind of people who are going to be able to look at the map and figure it out and say, oh, no, you're safe, or oh, yeah, no, that's a problem. Here, we're going to help you, but not
Yes.
tonight.
Rich, I think that could either.
That's going to be myself, Barry, Blair.
Yeah.
There'll be a staff to coordinate with the neighbors. Those type of
Awesome.
things.
Now, other than concerns, and it's actually it's a concern I hadn't even thought about, but I really enjoy how many times it was sort of peppered with, it's a great idea, it's great, but here's my concern, because you're right, it's now you're making it, we're all sort of whatever, the roads get flatter, they get less curvy, people sort of have a tendency to speed down them. So now we sort of have vetted the idea of some concerns about progress and also about people's property. Other than those, Rich, do you know of any questions or concerns currently that people have that this venue is appropriate for versus some other venue?
I don't believe so this time.
And Barry, do you have any other comments before I open up these guys?
Nope, nothing right now. That's our, that's
Mr.
our
De
plan.
Placido,
No, I have no comments.
Kevin, do you have any questions?
None for mine.
Anita?
No questions.
Blythe?
Thank you.
Good.
I think we have discussed it, so let's move along to number 9.
Let's hold up a bit on a discussion. This is Ashley MacArthur. I live across from Karen and David.
Okay,
And
no,
my-
we've moved on to question 9.
I just muted him so you
Thank
could
you.
address him.
So the next thing up is the Memorial Day Parade.
Yes. So after the board took this up at the last meeting, there was a question posed by member of one of the groups in town, or leader of one of the groups in town, who's interested in having the parade go forward after all. And we discussed it last time. There was requirements for having a parade safety plan and concern about certain, populations not being vaccinated and participation. And so we put it back out there to the various groups, and included in your packet is a parade update that Nancy put together, and then an email from Commander McCarthy about his concerns about it. So we put this all together last Thursday, and then the governor's order changed again so that masks are no longer required after May 29th. The parade safety plan, I got confirmed today, would not be required either. But we still have groups who don't want to participate, some do. And I think a concern by the commander that it's a little late at this point to try to pull that together. So it's back in front of you as a board to say, what do you think is the best approach, if, this year or not?
So my recollection is that we, as you say, we had sort of decided and voted not to do it. And then I understand that things changed. So I'll weigh in, but I first want to hear from others about their thoughts. And I do have some questions, and then maybe we can sort of ruminate. But Kevin, what are your thoughts? I know that this was something you had wanted to have put back on. And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are about it.
Sure. So at this past town meeting, we brought forward a set of zoning changes for the town center district. That was the accumulation of 2.5 years of work by the B1 zoning committee. All of those zoning changes did pass, which was fantastic, and was great to get the support from the town. Are you pointing to a different agenda item?
We're on Memorial Day Parade.
Oops.
And I didn't interrupt you because I was like, maybe that this is.
I was trying to connect the dots
On
too.
such a roll, too. I was rattling things off.
Good.
The parade, like it's
I'm
gonna
connected
draw
the
I don't know what the
dots.
connection is, but I can't
people
wait to hear it.
to the town.
The parade.
What I had said was, which cannot quite grasp how you weren't hanging on every single one of my words like they were gold. What I was saying was we had already voted against the parade, and then I understand that there was someone who felt that we should have the parade, and more than one someone, but someone who reached out to us. And then the rules changed, and that, Kevin, it was you who had wanted to put it back on, and that's no judgment, but I just figure it was your hunt. So what did you want to add? And then I have some questions, and then we can sort of ruminate.
Sure.
It was sort of, it's not as good the second time. No. My statement was much better the first time.
So from this perspective, I think, we had initially made a determination based on where we were currently in the state of COVID, on if to have a parade and what kind of event to have. Shortly after that, the goalposts were changed, for lack of a better term. And there were some additional allowances that were done in regard to events like this. The leader of the Cub Scouts in town reached out to us and said, based on this new guidance, would you be willing to reconsider? As part of that guidance, there needed to be some input from public safety professionals and from the Board of Health to develop a plan to be able to be approved. not to be developed by the Board of Health, but approved by the Board of Health. So based on that, I just wanted to see if there was any feelings from those who would be involved and who give us some input to want to expand what we had previously determined to move forward with. And I think at our last meeting, we had determined that we rely heavily on the input from our public safety officials and from the Board of Health and from the organizers of the parade. So we were looking for some feedback from them to be able to make a determination on how we move forward. Have we gotten that feedback?
So the police and fire have said that there are maybe 4 or 5 officers or firefighter paramedics who'd be willing to participate and march, but not the full contingent. I think there's still, I think from the chief, there's still a little bit of concern about COVID, even though, you know, for some populations, even though, you know, the mask mandate will have been dropped. We don't have to have a parade safety plan now that the rules have changed again. And so the Board of Health doesn't have to take any action. They never had to take action, we just had to file it with them. So we have some groups like the Lions and some Cub Scouts, and some others who like to participate, and some like the band who says we can send someone to the cemetery, but we're not gonna be providing a full band. So it's more participation than I think when we first started out looking at this, but it's not what is normally done. And I think there are still some concerns about whether or not it's a good idea, or especially at, 10 days out or whatever the exact number is, 12 days out.
Because at this point, we still don't have a point of contact to develop a parade safety plan.
You don't have to have one
Don't
anymore.
have to have one anymore.
Oh.
As of,
We're-
as of
we're,
29th of May, and this is the 31st. It's a little easier. But who's gonna really manage, it all, given that it's May 18th and we're talking about May 31st, so.
Okay. So, from my perspective, I think we did our due diligence to get the input that we needed to reevaluate. I don't know if you have the same feeling as me, but it just doesn't seem like it's something that we would necessarily be able to pull together effectively in a short amount of time.
And as somebody who marched in the band in high school, a parade without the band
it's awful.
is pretty not great. And I think that there's times that we want to be the first one out of the gate, but this might not be the one where we want to be first one out of the gate, like, oh, the regulations are gone, bam, and rush out with our whole town onto the street without a mask. So I guess going slow seems more, it's sad because there's a tradition here that's being lost, but so many traditions have been put on hold or hesitated or waited, and the waiting will give it more glory next year when we have a band and we have the fire chief and we have everybody on board. It'll be extra special next year because we waited.
So I have some questions. I appreciate the update. Again, is this update in the packet that folks were at home? Awesome.
Yep.
So to Anita's point, generally, the reason I go to parades is the band, or the bands, or like I watch anything for the marching bands. But that's just me, right? There's people who go to parades for other than the bands, I suppose. But if I'm running through this, it looks like there's no information as to whether or not there's a color guard. Commander McCarty, I read in this isn't a post-whip, but I gathered that subsequent there was some concern about the timing, that it was a little too close. So I would sort of, just in terms of weighing, I would put him as an out, like not necessarily like pulling everybody together. So color guard, likely no. Post 335, likely no. I gotta say they probably need a different name. Post 335 firing squad. Sounds ominous, but now I'm interested. Right? It's a little dark, but they discussed the parade and they had reservations, and so I expect that there wouldn't be the firing squad. Sadly, which is obviously the reason most people come to parades, I won't be here. So that's going to be a letdown for some people. I gather that the minister and the ministers and priests will be at the cemetery for the ceremony to do the invocation and convocation. Senator Roush, it's unclear. Brett Dooley will be accompanying me, so he also won't be here. No marching band, but there would be trumpet players for taps, also part of the ceremony. Chief Stone will provide, and this is, put a thumbtack in this one, Chief Stone will provide traffic support and will be at the cemetery for the ceremony, but would not be, there will be no police contingent in the parade. Chief Kinney indicates there would be a small group, approximately 5, who would be willing to march, which isn't necessarily a, we have 5, they're pumped, they're already there, getting ready to go, but just that they found 5 who might do it. The Lions are like all in, and 57 of them. Now, I've never actually seen us get all of the flags together, and I know they try though, so God bless them. I know that there are some Girl Scout troops who are potentially interested in it, some Boy Scout troops who are potentially interested in it. No 6th graders reading the Gettysburg Address. No information on a military vehicle contingent. So, whereas the parade usually has the band and a couple people show up with horses and all of this and all of that and all of the other thing, and it's a big to-do. Now it's the Lions and some of the Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and some of the Girl Scouts. I think that, and maybe a couple guys on fire. And even then, I would say, you know, it's a free country. If that's how you want to spend your Sunday, I don't know that I can say necessarily don't spend your Sunday walking up and down Main Street, with the caveat that you do need to provide traffic support and who pays for it. Like, if it's going to be the taxpayer that pays for a parade that we always do, and then it is what it is. But if it is going to be the taxpayer that pays for a parade that is really, really not a parade, but is just what I just recited, I don't think that we should have to. So unless, I mean, if what's his name? Roach? If Kevin Roach or the Boy Scouts troop leaders, and maybe there isn't a cost, but I feel like if you have details shutting down Main Street, even if it's just for however long it takes them to walk down it, and then shutting it down for them to come back, maybe it's not a lot. Maybe they will pay for it. But I wouldn't want to say no to something just because it wouldn't be what I would want to do. But I also wouldn't want to necessarily pay for it. And I think I'd want to sort of explore the other sort of disruptions if it's for something anemic, like what they're contemplating. And then I guess the last thing is it that they're looking for a, you know, today's just about discussion, obviously also there's that issue in terms of it in the agenda, but are they looking for, do they need a permit? Like, what is it, how are?
No, I don't think we issue a permit. It's just a matter of, is there a green light from the board to go ahead with this, or are we still sticking to the decision that was already made?
I see. And do we know what the costs would be?
No, I mean, it could be as simple as, you know, officer who's on duty, you know, blocking traffic so you could walk down and then blocking it to walk back. I don't think there's I don't think cost is the issue
okay.
here.
Because that would just
Yeah.
be my big sort of, you know what, I feel like it just doesn't seem particularly great, but I just don't know. Where I'm stuck is, I don't know that it is my role as a member of the board, and it may be, and it's just me. I'm not saying anyone else needs to change their position. If it's my role to determine what is and isn't entertaining to other people. The ceremony we already agreed should happen, and the ceremony is what is marking the importance of the day. The parade is entertainment, and so all our screen just went.
I have it over here. We do have a hand up whenever we finish our dialogue, but
Oh, okay.
I can let
It
you know
just
what's
went
going on.
dark, and I was like, what do I? So I'm just wondering whether or not I'm projecting by saying we shouldn't have it, just because it's not something that I necessarily would want to do.
Well, and I think beyond the financial cost of it, I think there's also a risk factor. That the risk factor's not gone. it's just less. And so I see prudence in waiting just a little bit more.
Seems like it's loading up. And Kevin has disappeared.
Yeah, I mean, the thought in the office was, you know, if it isn't a good fit this year for the reasons we're discussing, then let's be very proactive, get a group together over the summer and start planning, you know, the amazing return in
We're not
2022.
on right now, so we should probably
Alright.
hold off for a second until he gets back loaded up. I'm sorry, I was fielding text messages from angry people about cutting off somebody.
Well, not my role.
There we go. So should we? Okay, so to go back, what Blythe was saying is save our pennies and then do a big one next year.
Well, just get everyone together and really, you know, not that we need to rethink it, but just make sure that we've hopefully planned a really awesome return if this is the year that we have to take a pass on it.
Yep.
If that's what the board decides.
What's your thinking now that you've listened to me ramble?
I'm in the same boat. And to be honest, I was probably in the same boat when we first started this discussion, but I was open to the opinions of those who are much more qualified to make decisions like this.
And then they didn't help us, but they sort of
they
ended up
completely
I was
stayed
kind
on
of
the
thinking the
fence,
same
yeah.
thing. I'm like, they're gonna tell us, like, woo, we're all in, or no, you're crazy, that's so dangerous, and
But that being said, I think that we can find ways to incorporate the Cub Scouts into
Yes,
the smaller thing that we already
absolutely.
have planned. If we're hearing that the sixth graders are not going to be reading the Gettysburg Address, I mean, why couldn't we invite the Cub Scouts up, if not the Gettysburg Address, to do something else up at the microphone, to participate in the day and in the event?
right. That's I
Absolutely.
think what Anita or Blythe, I can't remember who suggested. Maybe it was you suggested at the town meeting
Yeah.
that you know, give them index cards to read the pieces of the Gettysburg Address off, or somehow involve them in that ceremony rather than, yeah.
Right.
So I think that it's my sense, and I know I'm just one person, but it's my sense that while I'm reluctant to tell people not to do things that aren't necessarily going to cost the town money or sort of impact people adversely in any given way, I don't see that this is something that really makes sense. And, you know, if they want to, I don't know, get a permit for Town Hill and stand around with the 57 flags on, have at it, but just stay 6 feet apart, I guess, without your masks. I don't know. So I like the idea of involving both the Lions and Girls and Boy Scouts in the ceremony if there's a place for it. So.
Sounds good to me.
We will let everyone know.
You did have a hand up for this item if you wanted to field a public comment.
Nope.
Okay.
Public comment is at the beginning, and I understand from the prior one that there was some, part of it could have been I am as deaf as a post, and we're having you do the, look at the little hand stay, because we had the issue with the iPad, but given the nature of the discussion, I think that we've done enough, and so let's move on to 10. Now, Kevin.
I've already wasted my good intro. I don't know what to do now.
Well, you could dance.
All right, so just to briefly recap, at our previous town meeting, the B1 zoning committee brought forward a set of zoning changes for town center to help encourage mixed-use development in an effort to try to deliver on the master plan's vision for town center. That was the culmination of 2.5 years of work with consultants and professionals in planning, feedback from the community, and we were excited to get some direction from the town in that they approved the implementation of these zoning changes. So now we look forward to what we're going to be doing now that these zoning changes have been made for town center. I think something that we had talked about previously, prior to Anita joining the board, was the potential for reinstituting the Economic Development Committee, with the intent that they would take the proverbial torch from the B1 committee and move forward with the marketing, planning, and the outreach associated to having Town Center now be developed in line with the vision and what was sold to the community. I did reach out to Walter Byron, who was a great point of contact on the previous Economic Development Committee that was established in 2007 and ran until 2013. He sent me over a couple of the annual reports that were associated with them. It was jointly appointed by the Select Board and the Planning Board. It was a 7-member committee at that time. They worked off of 3 main goals: to identify viable business interests and alternatives that meet the service needs of the town, to create a sustainable tax base, and to encourage higher density development within non-residential districts by facilitating marketing information. They focused on 2 main areas: the town center marketing and the commercial district marketing over on Route 1A. So that all being said, I figured it would be a good time, now that we're past town meeting, to have a discussion now to see what we felt about the institution of this committee, how we would go about that, the partnership associated to it, and basically if there was still interest in taking this next step.
So it sounds interesting to me because it seems like this, that's the next step, right? It's either do this or then all that work was for nothing. And so we've set it up, the ball is in the air, now we need to lob it to the next group. So it sounds like a good idea to me.
So I just have some questions, Elise. Is it your position then, because you got these zoning changes approved with certain, I would argue, rollback problems as well, in terms of some of the sort of late in the day amendments to them, but by and large you got them through, and I'm talking about 29, that B1 is done? Have you disbanded? Does it no longer exist? Has it ceased to be, as they would say in Monty Python? Like, what happened to B1?
So the B1 committee, as soon as we handed off the recommendations to the planning board is the one who really championed bringing them forward to town meeting. They had their own dialogue, their own vote. They actually altered them a little bit before it got to town meeting, and they're the ones that brought them forward as the sponsors of the articles. Mm-hmm. So at that point, the B1 was fairly dissipated. There were some people who were still participating up to that point just because we had carried it that far. But I do not believe that the intent was to carry forward the B1 working committee after this town meeting. Now that decision would lie specifically with the planning board, as it is a subcommittee of the planning board. But as a member of the B1 committee, I believe that was my understanding.
I think I understood from Rich McCarthy that the planning board is planning to disband the B1 at their June meeting.
Yep.
That the work is done.
So that the only thing I would say to that, and then I'll go on to my next question, is that I would want to make sure that that actually happens before we go adding another committee. Because for the same reason when we were talking about this, I think it was actually even 2 years ago, right? It was, I think, 2019 when we started talking about whether or not an economic development committee made sense. Are there enough people? No one will ever volunteer, but yet we always do get great volunteers. So never say never just because of a lack of volunteers. I want to see, just in terms of ramping something up, that the thing that sort of was leading to its genesis has sort of stopped, with one thought. And then, but my next thought, because I do recollect the Economic Development Committee from the past, and them always, sort of making, at town meeting, coming up at the organizational section when they can talk about what's been going on, and talking about all of the stuff that they had been trying to do, with varying degrees of success. Why did they stop? What was the reason? And again, that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily I think it's worth exploring. Just I'll put this at the front. I think it's worth exploring. I just would be curious as to what, and maybe we don't know exactly, maybe we just go back in the minutes. I know I was looking at the minutes for something else the other day, and I was looking in 2010, and they're at the town meetings, and there were people talking about the economic development. Like, so I'm sure we could find out if we don't know. And so if we don't have the answer tonight, or we only have a partial answer, I think it would be worth exploring what went wrong, or why wasn't it the right time, or was it too many people, not enough people, you know, and use those, what happened or didn't happen there as just something to learn from if we're going forward with another committee.
That makes perfect sense. And, you know, much of what I've heard, and it's all been secondhand from those who had been there previously, was the Economic Development Committee was weighted heavily on the passage of some zoning changes to town center to be able to
Right.
accommodate for the growth,
That's
which
what my
never came to
recollection.
fruition, right?
That
And I
was
think
my
it was,
recollection as well, but I was just curious if you knew anything else.
yeah, I think it was after that point where a town meeting vote was unsuccessful to change zoning, where they decided, well, if we're not gonna have the zoning to do it, why have the Economic Development Committee in the first place? In the last town final report they had in 2013, they identified they only had 4 members out of the 7 filled, looking for new members. So I do imagine that, you know, some people probably dropped off and they were getting harder to fill those roles. But if recent history has told us anything, when we have these committees come up and we put a call out to the community, we've been fairly successful the last couple of times.
Well, and frankly, if the determination is made that it's a good idea, and the determination is made to do 7, and then it's opened up, and if it's us who's forming it, obviously you couldn't be on it, in terms of the 7, right, because of the rules, the ethical rules, but it's opened up and you can only locate 3, then maybe it's an organization of 3, right? Like, I don't think you just throw out the idea just because of perhaps a dearth of volunteerism at any given point. You can just sort of, I don't know, that's just my thinking. So I think that it's worth, same thing as with what other people might view as entertainment. I don't want to ever say no that there shouldn't be a particular committee. If there's enough interest in anything within reason, there should be a committee, right? And there was before, and maybe it was certainly to a degree, I imagine banging your head against the brick wall of consistently being shot down at town meeting anytime, and I remember those meetings. That would be a good reason to stop. So here we are.
Yeah.
So I would just want to see, maybe we put it on for the, sort of more discussion about what it should look like at a meeting subsequent to the planning board meeting. By then we can have picked more brains, read more minutes, and have a more fulsome discussion.
If you'd like, we could also look around to see if other communities have them. Do they have a charge to their committees? We might learn from some of that.
Yeah, how successful are they? I mean, that's another thing I'd be interested in. And, B1 was successful, right? That's something that you had a net, but that's something where it's, here's the organization and here's the net goal. And you sort of work towards that goal, have achieved the goal. This is somewhat more nebulous. Is it just, a bunch of people from middle management who like to talk at each other and but as I'm saying it out loud, who cares, right? Like, if it's the 7 people who enjoy each other's company and they're happy to do the work, then even if they never get anything achieved, they're involved, and then we cherry pick them when we need them for other. We'll be like, well, Sally likes public service. She's on this. Let's pull her for that. I do want to add that I did want to go look at some of their minutes, and they have never submitted any. So. Naughty. So we should probably make sure that whatever is, we dot our I's and cross our T's. Because I think that probably because they didn't have enough people, maybe that was why then.
But I also think from what I learned, and I understand it at a very low level, from what I understand before, you're kind of like throwing the dart at the dartboard and you had to hit it in the center. And if it wasn't in the center, it's not at all good.
Right. And even if you
now
hit it in the center.
Right. And now the dartboard's bigger.
Right.
And so now the task is much more manageable because we have more options to offer folks because of the work of the B1 committee. So the charge was next to impossible previously because of that small intersection that were limited by our zoning laws, and even that committee recognized that. And now, because of the work of that committee, we are ready to go again because now we have a target we can hit. It's a hittable target.
We hope to hit.
And we also have some people on the B1 committee who have already expressed interest in continuing
that's
to
what I
serve.
assumed that given that and certain of the correspondence and what committees the correspondence hailed from, I assumed that there was already a bench from which to pull for the new team. So, but even if they're, even if they're, I think at the end of the day, it's great to, to come up with committees, especially something like this, because to your point, I don't know where you wrote it, maybe it was in here, maybe it was somewhere else. And I don't know that the amounts that you guys would be able to create would necessarily differ much, but we are so top heavy on residential real estate taxes and so dependent on it, and any opportunity to offset, but also any opportunity to sort of say, hey, we have a nice downtown, let's go and do this, that, or the other thing, other than my Goldschlager and scratches comment, which is also no judgment. That's also a great way to spend a day, but we would like to have more. So I think it's great.
And the other thing too is, Southwood is in a much different place than it was 10, 15 years ago. We have a developer who's in the process of doing assessments on the site with the potential for a proposal coming before the town. It might be a good opportunity to have a committee like that in place to be able to shape what type of commercial and business we have in that area, if there is to be any.
Right. I think you want to be careful when you're, or whomever, because it wouldn't, whoever's on the board, whoever is in charge of the charter, they don't end up with so much scattershot, and also that people don't sort of perceive the Economic Development Committee as only being about South, right? That would be a good thing to make sure that it's about the whole town, including Southwood, including the center. I don't really know that we have anything else.
That's it right
The
now.
Dunkin' Donuts, Route 2, so Route 1A, but yeah, so I think it's definitely worth pursuing, but just to be careful of things like the minutes.
Yeah.
So, all right, next up is number 11, discuss website posting of board correspondence. Does anyone have any?
I didn't look.
I don't.
No.
Number 12, town administrator updates.
Just one update, pleased to announce that earlier this year, MAPC put out its request for communities that did anyone want to apply for any technical assistance funding for any help with anything. Rich McCarthy and I sat down, looked at that, and submitted for 2 projects. One would be the economic development portion of the master plan, and the second item was technical assistance funding to assist us with the citizen engagement portion of Southwest Bill, and making sure that is done in a robust way to get people involved in what the outcome would ultimately be. And they have awarded us $10,000 for the Southwood Hospital portion of the work. We
Wow.
learned that today. So we have to, we sent a 2-page, quick proposal. They will be looking for us to submit to them a longer proposal late next week, which Rich is going to work on. They suggest that we consider, probably at a fall town meeting, looking to add, $5,000 or $10,000 from the town's budget to supplement that. These are always meant to be seed money to, put with a little of yours and a little of ours, and we get there. But good news. So
That's
I want to
awesome.
let you know about that, and we'll keep you up to date on the details. And secondly, we did win the award for the health grant. We're still working towards the details of when that's going to launch and exactly how and what it looks like. Keep you informed about that as well.
Does that mean, that's awesome about the Southwood Outreach seed money, but does that mean that, no, because it would be kind of nice for the new committee, assuming there is a committee, but of course there's going to be a committee. Does that mean that there was no money for the economic development, the technological aspects of the economic development of the master from the
So
master plan? Or you haven't heard yet, or I just wondered where that was?
We received earlier this year a award of $40,000 from the Community Compact Program to work on the master plan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to get us out of the gate on the master plan, but we were looking for a specific tranche of money just on economic development. So no on that for now. We can reapply later.
That was my question. I understood what it was for. My question was just, has it not come, have they not ruled yet, or did they say no?
They've ruled and said no, but these things come around fairly often, so we'll keep that high on our list and apply again.
And then I guess, so the 40,000, what's been done with that?
Nothing yet. We will, once we get underway, we're going to need to go out and hire a consultant to support us in that effort. And that was the maximum award the state was giving
Oh, that's
for
cool.
those sorts of things.
Those are all my questions. Kevin, do you have any questions?
Is that process managed by the planning board, or will that be coming to us for approval?
Good question. Let me look into that.
Thanks.
And then, Anita, any questions? So I guess we're moving on to number 13, right? And Blythe, I'll ask you, do I need to read the 4 bullets out loud and then invite a motion, or just?
Nope, just read the motion.
So I'm going to invite, who would like to, do I hear a motion on paragraph 13, section 13?
I move that the board approve 4 warrants for the period of May 4th through 11th, 2021, as printed on the agenda for this meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. Section 14. Jesus, I'm getting tired.
I move that the board approve the minutes of the May 4th and May 8th, 2021 regular meetings.
Is there a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's it, right? That is it. Okay, well, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 It is unanimous. We are adjourned.